Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Any opening public comment from the board this evening?
Yes, I'd just like to thank everyone who came out to the town caucus last night to set the initial ballot or nominate folks for the ballot. Want to thank everyone who put themselves out there for a position. It's kind of a big deal to put yourself out and ask for everyone's support, and it's not an easy thing to do. It takes a certain amount of courage, so quite a few people did. There's a lot of new faces who are getting involved as well, which is good to see. Very healthy for our town. So looking forward to see how the election season plays out. And just folks at home should consider, I think 102 voters were there last night to make these choices. There's 10,000 people in the town of Lunenburg, 10,000 plus. There's 7,000 plus registered voters. So 100 people kind of set the initial ballot. So you might want to consider, there's always room for more. So thanks everyone who did come out.
Thank you. I also would like to thank everyone. We had 5 contested races for everything from Board of Selectmen to Planning Board, Board of Health, School Committee, Park Commissioner, I think. So I think everything serves best when you have choices. It's really not much of a democracy if you have enough people running who just to fill the seats that really don't have a choice. So I think it is thankful for everybody who was out there voting and who was out there running. And thanks to the people who I'll be running against, Phyllis Luck and Joanna Bellata Simeone for their nominations last night at the caucus. So I congratulate them. I look for a good race with all of them. Any public comment from the public? Okay, first up we have, are we going to do this first?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
So we have the proclamation for the Boys and Girls Club designating March 23rd through March 29th as Boys and Girls Club Week in Lunenburg. We discussed this with the Boys and Girls Club director who's here today in attendance. So I will read the proclamation that we all agreed to and then we can sign it. Proclamation, whereas the young people of Lunenburg are tomorrow's leaders, and whereas many such young people need professional youth services to help them reach their full potential, and whereas there is one Boys and Girls Club in Lunenburg providing services to more than 150 young people annually, and whereas Boys and Girls Clubs are places where great futures start, they are at the forefront of efforts to encourage and develop academic success, healthy lifestyles, and good character and citizenship. And whereas the Boys and Girls Club of Lunenburg helps ensure that our young people have a place to go after school, offering them not only a safe and supportive place, but also providing them with quality programs. And whereas the Boys and Girls Club of Lunenburg will celebrate National Boys and Girls Club Week 2014, along with hundreds of clubs and millions of young people nationwide. Therefore, we, the Board of Selectmen of Lunenburg, do hereby proclaim March 23rd through March 29th as Boys and Girls Club Week in Lunenburg. We call on all citizens to join with us in recognizing and commending the Boys and Girls Club of Lunenburg for providing comprehensive, effective services to the young people in our community. Undersigned, all the Board of Selectmen. Okay, at 7 p.m. we have a public hearing. Notice of public hearing, Town of Lunenburg. The licensing authority will hold a public hearing on March 18th at 7 p.m. in the Joseph F. Bellata Meeting Room, second floor, Town Hall, on the application submitted by Vasta Inc., doing business as Lunenburg Liquors, for a new officer, director, and transfer of stock. This license is to be exercised at the premise located at 433 Electric Avenue, Lunenburg, Mass. 01462. Tom Alonso, Chairperson, Board of Selectmen Licensing Authority. Is there applicant here? Yes.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening. If you would introduce yourself and then tell us what's going on with the change in the Board of Directors.
My name is Anastasia Halkidakis. I've been running Lunenburg Liquors in Lunenburg for the past 6 years. Previously, I owned Presto Pizza. I own the building that they belong in. And basically, we're just having a change of transfer of stock from my husband solely to me, and he is no longer part of the corporation, so we need him taken off of, obviously it needs to be reviewed by the ABCC so he can no longer be part of the liquor license.
Okay. And that is the only change?
The only change, yes, transfer of stock and change of directors, correct.
Everybody has the papers in their packet. Does anybody have any questions for the applicant?
Is your husband still involved in the business, or?
No.
Okay.
I do have one question. It's kind of a silly question to be asking you tonight, but I believe there was a fee for the newspaper filing. I have a check here. I don't know if that would be due tonight or if that's something that I should see Linda for.
You should see Linda.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, if there are no questions for the applicant, I will entertain a motion on the change in officer and the transfer of stock.
I would move that we approve the change of stock as requested.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say,
It
what?
should be change of officers and...
Change of officer and transfer of stock, yes. Thank you. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Okay. So, that being said, any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. So this will get submitted to the ABCC for their approval. And once that comes back, you'll be notified. from
Thank
the
you very
ABCC.
much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. Sure. Brandon, we're going to get you before our 7:15. Oh, okay.
Brandon Kibbe, 146 Rolling Acres Road, serving on the Open Space Acquisition Advisory Committee. Last week, we talked to you about the proposed acquisition that is for the town for this upcoming Springtown meeting. And we've been going back and forth with the town council regarding the purchase and sale agreement. So knowing what your schedule is, we tried very hard to have a finalized purchase and sale agreement before you for tonight, all the way through late this afternoon, working with town council and going back and forth with the sellers council. Everything in the purchase and sale agreement, I think, is fully negotiated except one point, which is whether or not they will create a physical separation of the water line that currently crosses the property that we would be acquiring potentially. And then rather than just disconnecting at the house, to actually cut and cap the water line. That's the last outstanding item in the purchase and sale contract. In speaking with Carrie earlier today, she suggested that the selectmen are contemplating having a meeting next week, potentially, maybe not. So really, it's up to you how you want to do it. If the town council offered the opportunity, or offered the solution that you could vote to approve it tonight in a form substantially as it's presented to you tonight, with the final form to be approved by town council, and that way you'd have your vote, and then when the final form is available, then you could come in and make your signatures then. She said otherwise, if you wanted to hold off until the next vote, you could do that as well. Sort of, it's at your discretion, but it's up to you.
A question for the town manager first. So is the purchase and sale going to be part of, it's not going to be part of the warrant, right? It's just going to be a handout? Or will it be even that at town meeting when we ask people for the vote?
Well, I don't know that we've gotten that far into the discussion. The vote of town meeting would be to authorize the expenditure of funds to purchase the property, but not to authorize the purchase and sale agreement.
Right. Okay, so with that being said, my first inclination would be to get the document finalized instead of doing a contingent approval now, just waiting for the final one anyway.
Sure, that's fine.
The only concern that I have is that we're looking to move forward with the appraisal of the property as soon as possible. I don't know where we are in that process, but I want to make sure that that process isn't slowed down by the fact that the purchase and sale isn't signed, because it's critical that we get that number for town meeting.
The bids, we're soliciting quotes for the appraisal services. They're due on Thursday this week, and the appraisal itself is due on April 24th, I believe.
24th or 25th, I think, yeah.
And are they contingent upon the purchase and sale, or to get the appraisal done?
No, the appraisal's going forward without.
Okay, that's
Okay,
what
so we don't need the purchase and sale to move forward with the appraisal. That's the only thing I'm
The only
making
thing
sure.
that's in the purchase and sale contract gives us access for investigations and due diligence. If we, for some reason, do not have a signed purchase and sale contract at that point, though we're making every good faith to have that, I fully anticipate being able to get the seller's agreement to allow the appraiser to access the property for the purposes of making the appraisal. So I think we can work around that if we don't have the purchase contract. You know, in my mind, it's the sooner we can have everything signed up, then we know it's off the market until we get a crack at it.
That's my only concern is moving forward. I mean, I'm hopeful that the seller would agree to the appraisal, but without that signed purchase and sale, that language that's in the purchase and sale.
That's right.
So that's the only reason that I didn't know about possibly having a meeting next week, but my concern was that if we don't meet again until April, the beginning of April, I just don't want to slow down that process.
Okay, so I understand that, but my understanding, I mean, approving it contingent on that last thing being done is, I don't know, for all intents and purposes, the equivalent of not having a signed one anyway.
That's
You still have to
true.
work out the last detail.
That's true, but if the last detail really is a very minor technicality, they've gone, the water line that we're talking about here has had to have been fixed several times over the course of the last 6 or 8 months. They are totally familiar, or they ought to be totally familiar with what it costs to dig up the water line and make a repair. To dig up the water line and cap it is not going to be any different in terms of the cost. They didn't have their actual seller's council didn't have their seller's approval of that yet.
Okay.
So, and seller's council basically said, look, if this is a 6-figure thing we have to deal with, we want to know that, but it's not going to be.
Well, what I'd like to see happen, and I'll just offer that as a proposal for the board, is we'll just put it on our April 1st, because it sounds like it's going to be done a lot sooner. If that gets worked out and approved, that gets distributed to us. If there is some inkling that you hear that they need to have it before then we can entertain having, posting another meeting in time before then. But otherwise, I think if we sign it and agree on the 1st, that should be fine.
Okay.
I'll just float that for the board. I mean,
The question I had was the contemplation in the discussion of the approval by town council, were we authorizing town council to sign this on our behalf?
No.
No, okay, it was just that he
So-
would approve it, which therefore would give everybody the
So
understanding.
you have in front of you a copy of a purchase and sale contract that there will be very minor, if any, really, changes to it. And so the objective here is you agree in concept, you approve in concept, assuming town council can get the final last bits.
I guess I would just say that this looks okay, but we just got this tonight, and I'd be fine with delaying it as well. But I think it's important to note that, without speaking for other ones, that we're going to approve a purchase and sale agreement that's acceptable to town council, so just to show that there's a support.
I would agree with that sentiment. Anybody else?
I would agree with that too, and I would just say that if we do find ourselves in a position where we can't gain access to the property because we don't have the signed purchase and sale, then we need to let the town manager know as soon as possible so that we can organize a meeting to take care of this.
And we've been clear with the seller that we were trying very hard to meet tonight's deadline, knowing what your schedule is, and, so I think our good faith efforts are being made on both sides of the table, so.
Well, again, if you find something that really needs more urgency than cannot wait till April 1st, and we have the final document, then you would contact me and we'll just post a meeting.
Yeah, and if for some reason you choose to post a meeting, please
Yeah,
put this in,
okay,
because I
sure.
fully expect this to be ready for next Tuesday evening if you had a meeting.
That would give us
next
some
Tuesday.
time to review it too, so.
Sure.
Yep. I appreciate it.
While we're here, is the Open Space Committee planning to put on some kind of presentation to the voters, the taxpayers? I think you're familiar with this before. town
Yes,
meeting?
we've
We're all
been-
familiar, but I don't think people have seen.
We've been going over a number of different issues associated with our ability to inform the public about what exactly we're talking about here. So I think we've got the answers we need now. We're actually having a meeting, the Open Space Committee is having a meeting tomorrow evening, Thursday evening, excuse me, to talk about this some more. We have 2 public site walks already scheduled, one for April 19th, 10 a.m. in the morning, it's a Saturday, and another for April 26th, also a Saturday morning, 10 a.m., to give people in the community who are interested in taking a walk and seeing exactly what we're looking at here, an opportunity to see it before town meeting. We'll also get on the schedule some public informational meetings where we can do a PowerPoint presentation, and so we're trying to figure out what exactly the outreach for this needs to look like so that people can be informed when they get to town meeting floor.
And if you had access to blow up any maps or renderings that you could maybe put downstairs town hall, at the library, just places where people will see it incidentally,
Great.
they could maybe stop by, get a look at it. I think that helps.
Any and all
If you can.
ideas just like that, we will entertain, because we're looking very much at trying to spread the word as well as we can.
Please email to me the dates of those public walks, so I will announce them.
Okay,
And if we can get them to the town manager or the IT director so we can put them on the website,
terrific.
that would be great too. I mean, I'm assuming you want people to come, so.
Yeah, we
We need to
very
get it out
very
there.
much want people to
Right.
come. Yep,
So we need to get the word out,
that's right.
people will come.
That's right. So, and, there, with any luck, we'll have a press release as well that we can get out and
Sure.
just get some people out on the property.
Excellent.
Any other questions?
Anybody else? Thank you once again for
Terrific.
keeping us up to date.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, 7:15, another public hearing. Town of Lunenburg, notice of public hearing published March 7th, 2014, notice to the abutters. The licensing authority will hold a public hearing on March 18th at 7:15 PM in the Joseph F. Bellata Meeting Room, second floor, Town Hall, on the application submitted by Tarnum Williams, doing business as Kebabalicious, for a wine and malt beverages with cordial liqueurs permit. This license is to be exercised at the premise located at 165 Massachusetts Avenue, Lunenburg, Mass. Signed by me as the Chair of the Board of Selectmen and Licensing Authority. Good evening.
Good evening. Could I interrupt before you start
may.
your presentation? I just want to make the board aware that the applicant applied for wine, malt, and cordials, and that is something that shows on the application. But after doing some research, and Linda had a conversation with the applicant, the town must accept, it's a local acceptance for towns to offer beer, wine, and cordials, and we haven't accepted that provision. So there is a license available for wine and malt, and if the town is interested in pursuing wine, malt, and cordials, that has to go to town meeting vote, either by the board submitting a warrant article or the applicant petitioning. So I just wanted to make that statement before. So what's before you this evening is wine and malt only.
Okay, so it has been changed to wine and malt, given the information that you have now received.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. Furthermore, I will pursue the cordial and liquor as well in the very near future, as the town does their own due diligence of bringing 1993 legislative bylaws up to code for yourselves as well. So I don't know what the time process is for that, but meanwhile, I will pursue with beer and wine
Okay.
malt.
So for tonight's, for the
That's
purpose of
correct.
tonight, we're dealing with wine, a traditional wine and malt license.
That is
Okay.
correct.
So tell us a little, you were before us last week about the BYOB, so obviously this is the next
Yes.
step?
Yes, it is. I did initially apply for this, but meanwhile, I had a lot of guests requesting. I was trying to get on the agenda since February, but it didn't happen. Anyhow, this application before you is basically requesting that if you would allow me to sell beer and wine meanwhile, and forfeit the BYOB for the moment, because I just got that approved last week. So I will be looking forward to that.
We know from last week that you are tip certified.
Yes, I am. And a few of my staff members as well,
Okay, excellent.
yes.
Does anybody on the board have any questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Ribasol?
the question was the hours of operation?
My hours are basically goes from 10:30 in the morning for lunch, and dinner is about 9:30, and my guests normally stay until 10:30 and no later than probably 11 o'clock, because depending upon how long they stay and they finish, that's about it. And right now, I'm just like 7 days a week and open for holidays whenever they are. But right now, because I'm a brand new business in the community, I'm trying to figure out if I'm going to open 7 days or 6 days, so.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions for the applicant? This is our, how many, if this is approved, is this the last wine and malt one? License we have?
Is not. The town is allowed to have 9 common vic wine and malt licenses. There are 5 that have been approved. This would be the 6th.
So there are several left. If there are no further questions, and if there are no further questions from the applicant to us, then I would entertain a motion on the request for the wine and malt license for Kebabalicious.
I move that we approve the license request, wine and malt.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you. So we will submit this, and you will hear back when we hear back from the ABCC.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. One other question, do I have to do anything to further the liquor and cordials? Curious?
Well,
Well, there are 2 options. It does have to be approved by town meeting, so either this board would put forward a warrant article, or an interested party would submit by petition.
when does the warrant close?
It closes on Monday, the 24th at 4 p.m.
So if it's going to get on, then we'd have to see something in writing about what we would be putting on. Or it would wait till the fall special town meeting.
So when is my deadline to submit something to you?
Monday, March
Monday,
24th at 4 p.m. But
Okay.
if you submit, it's by petition, and you should, you have to get a form from the town clerk, and she will let you know how many signatures you need on the petition.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.
You too.
Okay. Ahead of time, interview candidates for committee appointments.
They should be in there, but that's...
They're not. Oh, there they are, I'm sorry. I lied. Okay, so we have some talent bank forms and some interviews.
That's alphabetical.
Alphabetical. Alphabetical sounds like the way to go. There we go. Okay. So first up is Jeffrey Bako?
Jacob.
Wow, okay, I apologize. Just come to the front and introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what your areas of interest are, although we have the talent bank form, but people at home don't, so.
My name is Jeff Pacheco. My wife and I, we moved to Lunenburg about 12 years ago. Really fell in love with this community. We have 2 kids. One's in 3rd grade and one will be starting kindergarten next fall. I felt like this was a way to help to get more involved in the community. And after reading that the public access needs more committee members, I felt like it's something that I could commit my time to and just learn about the process and learn more about the town and how I can get involved.
Excellent. Do you have any particular background in either the public, the access, or?
No. No.
Well, stay up here in case anybody has questions.
Hope so.
Does anybody have questions?
The only other question I have is, have you served on any volunteer committees, boards, anywhere in your past?
No committees or anything, but I do volunteer coaching soccer.
I just will alert you that we have discussed this, and there's a bylaw revision on the town meeting warrant, so it is not our intention to appoint anybody to that committee until we see whether the bylaw is accepted or not, so we know how many people we are looking for and how many we need, and what other bylaws are being changed in their charter, for lack of a better word, but in their charge.
Yep, yeah,
Okay, so you are
Joe informed me
Okay,
when I met with her.
And so we'll know right after town meeting.
Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Maureen Dupuy.
Hello.
Greetings.
Greetings. I'm Maureen Dupree. I live on Highland Street. My husband and I were both born and raised here. We are raising our daughter here and expecting another. We have a farm currently. I used to be on the Lunenburg Grange, a member, an officer. And it's very important to both of us to preserve the rural integrity of Lunenburg, what it was when we were small and what it was when our parents were small. So it would be my honor and privilege to be a part of the agricultural committee in town to continue that.
Are there currently any vacancies on the Agricultural Commission?
There aren't any current vacancies, but Jim Latanzi will be resigning because he is moving out of town.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Ms. Dupuy?
I know of her growing up in Lunenburg and can speak highly of her for the personal
Thank you.
understanding, so look forward to your application.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I think the background as farmer's wife is kind of a shoe-in.
That's what I do. It's what I do. I worked at the Boys and Girls Club and it was a great time, but he needs my help a little bit over there.
Did I miss something on the, there it is.
That's my background.
Right.
That's a full-time job.
Oh,
As
yes.
somebody who, from time to time, buys eggs at the farm and also has worked with her at the Boys and Girls Club, I'm glad you're stepping forward. I think you'd be a good addition.
Thank you.
And when we're notified of the vacancy, we will let everybody know, and we'll announce it before we just appoint somebody, just in case anybody else does want to apply, just so you're aware.
Excellent.
But thank you for filling out the form and putting yourself on our list.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Next, Deborah Lincoln.
Hi, it is Deborah, but I'm hoping it'll be Debbie, because Deborah was when I was really bad.
Deborah was what?
When I was bad, I
Oh,
was
then you
called
should have
Deborah.
filled it out, Debbie.
I know. I'm Debbie Lincoln. I live on Hemlock Drive. I've been a longtime Lunenburg resident, graduated from high school with Rob's brother. I'll throw that one in there. And I would like to represent what I think is a somewhat underrepresented demographic of 55 to 65. I'm shortly going to be out of that demographic myself, but I'd like to serve on the Council of Aging with the idea of attracting younger folks, some new activities perhaps, and that's why I've applied to the Council on Aging. Also because it's a free floor show with Doreen Noble at the meetings. It's a wonderful activity, and I'd like to be part of that.
Excellent. Again, do we have currently, are there any openings on the council?
There are, I'm having a little trouble to determine it. There's a note that says there are 5 vacancies. Are there, you have a
There
12-member
will be, I
board?
think, shortly. I think
Okay.
there's term limits
Yeah.
involved.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's at least a couple.
Yes, I think there's somebody else in the stack here somewhere you may know that has term limits.
Indeed.
That was applied. I think it's wonderful, and I know so much goes on at the Eagle House with Doreen, with the staff, and with the Council on Aging, so I know it's a very, and of course, it's a growing demographic, not specifically the demographic that you're looking at, but the whole senior demographic is growing, as people who saw Doreen's slideshow at the FinCom was very quick to point out, so it's something that really needs to be addressed, and I'm glad that people are coming forward with it. Anybody have any questions for the applicant, for Debbie?
Thank you.
Just repeat my earlier comment, known Debbie all my life, so certainly I
Excellent.
appreciate the, as a member of that demographic.
Thank you. If I could, I'd like to kind of add a comment, maybe a suggestion. I know that it's been an issue to get volunteers, and while that doesn't apply to me, public speaking is one of the most common fears, and I think some people are deterred by that, and I know you want to put faces on the volunteers for people, so here's a thought. Maybe you could have a meet the volunteers once a year, have all the committees come forward, meet the public, and maybe some people that are a little afraid of speaking in public on public TV might be more inclined to come forward.
Okay.
Just a thought. Maybe that doesn't work for you, but
Yeah, we will take it, we will consider it.
thank you.
Thank you.
So can we actually make an
Yeah,
appointment
can we,
tonight?
yeah, Mr. Chairman,
What?
since we do have a vacancy, could we make an appointment?
Oh, yeah, I'm
tonight?
sorry, this is the first one we have, I apologize, yes.
Can I go back?
Well, there are other ones for the council. Do we have, like, I guess there's not more than there are vacancies.
Mr. Chairman, just a point of order, the meeting says interview candidates for committee appointments. Do we have the authority to make appointments under that? I just want to make sure that we're, because usually we list,
But we do have appointments, reappointments and resignations. Could we, like,
Yeah,
or-
it has been, I mean, if we go traditionally when we do the interviews, if we have vacancies, we have made appointments.
I just want to be consistent. I'm not
Yeah.
opposing doing the
No,
interviews
no,
for the council.
I mean, I'll take either one. I mean, either one is fine with me. Whatever the pleasure of the board is, but that is traditionally what we've done.
I'd make a motion to appoint Debbie Lincoln to the Council on Aging.
second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make a comment. I think the suggestion of having a Meet the Volunteers Day is a great one. I think it's something we should explore, because a lot of people don't know what, for example, the Conservation Commission does, or what Council on Aging does, and sort of like going to a job fair, just having the committees have displays of what they're doing, what their focus is, and having people, giving people the opportunity to come in is something I think we should explore.
Well, I think that was an excellent idea. I don't think that necessarily reflects the idea that the applicant was asking. I thought she meant that people, instead of interviewing publicly, you would meet them informally. Not like both.
I think it was
okay.
both.
I think it was both. It will bring volunteerism forward in both those senses, to know what the committees do.
Okay.
And to not have to speak in public.
Okay. Well, we can certainly look into doing one of those. I mean, see if it makes any difference. I think that's fine. Next, Pete Lincoln, who clearly likes to be called Pete because he didn't put Peter.
Guess he's never bad.
That's right, that's right. No, maybe he was called Peter too much, which is
Well, I was called Stinkin' Lincoln as a kid, actually. I'm Pete Lincoln from Icebound Hickory Hills, and I'm here to reapply for the position of Council on Aging. I'm in timeout this year. Point of order, what you were just talking about, our procedure at the Eagle House has always been that the candidates come before the Eagle House, see what's going on, are interviewed by us, and we determine whether we want them on the council, and then that name is forwarded to you. So that anyone that you appoint outright has yet to be even seen by members of the Eagle House. I don't know if all the committees do it that way, but that's the way we've always done it.
We do, from time to time, get recommendations from bodies, but sometimes people put in talent bank
Just
forms
walk
straight
in.
out.
Sure.
But I think that what Mr. Lincoln is talking about is, I think the bylaw reminded me, their section of the bylaw provides that they make recommendation to us.
Yes.
So we technically may not have been authorized to appoint
I think that's
Debbie.
correct. I think that's correct according to the Council on Aging bylaw, so we may have to rescind that appointment pending.
Wow, this is the fastest term ever.
So
Put the time out now.
there's something about giveth and taketh away.
Well, okay,
This, we can go ahead with the interview process.
I've,
certainly.
So we'll see if this leads to an appointment for you now, bringing this up.
well, I cannot be reappointed until August. I've served my year, and I would like to ask, at this point, one question of you all. What was the rationale behind term limits for committees?
I would probably, as probably the person with the longest tenure on the board, say that it was probably invoked before I was even on here, so I couldn't venture a guess. Generally, it's the same with all term limits. People have term limits because either their energy level fails, or they feel like once they're in, they're entrenched, and things don't change, and they want new blood. I mean, I'm positing possibilities. I really don't know which one of those was.
And that only applies to volunteer committees, not elected committees.
Actually, it's only two committees, two bylaws for the PAC and the Council on Aging, and the only two that have term limits.
Right.
Really?
Right. I think by state law, I don't know that you can invoke term limits. I'm not sure about this either. By state law, elected officials, I don't know that if the state allows it. So,
Well, here's the problem. We have 11 people on our committee, and if you run all 6 years of your term, just by average, you're going to lose 2 people every single year. And the chances are one more added, you're going to lose 3 people pretty much per year. It takes quite a while to know what's going on fully with the Council on Aging. So every year is an educational year. And a lot of the members that do vote really aren't sure what's going on. It takes a while to do that. And over the time I've been on, we've lost some terrific members that don't have Roosevelt sort of persecution and have left the committee, and it's been unfortunate. Right now next year we'll have 5 vacancies. And so it's going to be a difficult thing to do. And so I would, at this point, maybe question whether the term limits is a good option.
well, as somebody who's been an opponent for term limits for many, if not all, the same reasons you just listed, I would certainly, I mean, if it's a bylaw, we can bring up an article at a future town meeting to change that or remove it. I think you lose. I think term limits, well, on one hand, the people who advocate them say what I said initially, but I think what you're saying is more true, is in volunteer organizations especially, people do it because they want to do it. And it takes a while. And I think by forcing term limits, I think you lose good people for no reason other than somebody chose an arbitrary number.
I think Barbara was suggesting this. The Council on Aging naturally is going to have elderly people to a large degree on the committee that might perhaps lose their effectiveness after a while. But that seems to be targeting a demographic that seems somewhat unfair, I would say. Personally, I've had a great time working with the Council on Aging. We've got a bocce accordion that was my goal 6 years ago, and thanks to 3 of you and some tremendously generous volunteers, after 6 years we'll be able to play this spring. And we started a film program, and we've got a director on board that is the highlight of my week. Very energetic, interesting, and I think very, very elderly-orientated person that does a great job there. And to continue in that capacity would be something I really look forward to.
Any questions for Mr. Lincoln?
Thank you for volunteering again.
I'm personally glad to appoint you back. I think you did a great job. You continue to do a great job, and so thanks.
Thank you.
Now, not knowing, because I don't have the bylaw in front of me about that, I mean, we could continue with the appointment and then,
Well, in this particular case, Mr. Lincoln said he's not eligible till.
yeah, so we can wait on his, because his appointment would be.
Right.
If I may ask, how did you get so far off the normal appointment cycle? How did you fill in somebody's?
There has not been 11 on it for quite a while.
No. The fact that you said you can't be appointed till August, meaning that you left at a time, most appointments start
July.
July 1st
July
to
1.
June 30th.
Well, I say August because we don't have a meeting in July. Our first meeting of the year is in.
Okay, so it would be a normal appointment. Okay, gotcha.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so we will table yours because we have some time.
And I would ask that if we could get some feedback from the Council on Aging, since it is their bylaw on term limits, I'm certainly willing to remove that restriction, but I'd just like to get some feedback from the Council on Aging.
Well, I don't know that we need feedback from the Council on Aging. We just have to look at the bylaw. We just don't have it right here in front of us, so we'll just look it up after the meeting.
Perhaps I'm wrong, but I seem to recall them coming forward with some revisions to the bylaw, and I don't know if this was one of them, so I just...
Okay.
I actually think it's part of the charter. I think the Council on Aging is defined in the charter, not a bylaw.
Right,
Well, we definitely need to look at that.
Right, we'll look it up. Next, Renee M. Lafayette.
Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you?
Good, yourself?
Well, thanks. My wife and I are relatively recent residents of Lunenburg. We moved here in late September of the past year, and I'm a former history and government teacher at Northbridge High School. And one of the, highlights of my tenure there was to create a course entitled Citizenship in Action. And for better or for worse, I'm still in contact with many of my former students. And when they learned, through social media, of course, that we had moved to Lunenburg, the number one question was, well, Mr. Lafayette, what are you going to do now? So, on their part as well as my own, I stand before you, and hopefully there may be something that might work, might be a good fit as far as my own experiences beyond the classroom in government. I have to admit, Mr. Chairman, I shared this, I believe, with the town manager when we spoke, that I have been intrigued with the fence surveyor's position, and I've researched it. I think it could be lucrative, depending on, of course, how many fences are in need of surveying here in town. I think I could make a very strong case, not having a dog in this fight, at least as far as a fence that might be askew, except for our own dog, Otto, who is appropriately licensed, and who unfortunately was I think, distracting me, if not distracting the town manager, when we had a telephone conversation and he was squeaking his toy. Anyway, loudly.
With that presentation, I'm going to
Yes.
appoint you to every committee.
I was afraid of that. I don't want the council raging. Thanks. That'll come soon enough.
And I was wondering how long it was going to take somebody to really uncover that hidden gem of fence viewing, and thank you
Well, that's it.
for doing that. So I see in order you have chosen Personnel Committee, Montechusett Joint Transportation Commission, and then the illustrious fence viewer, which was written in as other. Thank you, first of all, for coming forward. I'm glad. However, whatever got you in front of us, I'm glad, whether it was social media pressure from ex-students or your own, reading back of your own lectures.
I think if residents can see their way to help out, it's a great thing. And it's important. It's important, I think, to keep a community vibrant, and it's a wonderful community. It's a beautiful community. We feel blessed to be here.
Where you were before, did you ever serve on any public committees, boards, et cetera?
Yes. So the short answer, yes, Mr. Chairman, I did.
Can you share what they were?
Of course. I come from the South. We came up from Rhode Island. And there I...
The Deep South.
It actually wasn't south of Providence. That would have qualified for the Deep South. No, I served as a library trustee, and from there served in the State House of Representatives, and then served as the county sheriff of Providence County, Rhode Island, before finding my way to education. And it's as interesting as those other aspects of my life have been, and heaven knows they were, nothing compares to the classroom. It's humbling.
No.
It's frightening.
It's all of
It's
those
humbling,
things.
yes.
But starting out library trustee is a slippery slope. It leads right into those other things.
Sure does. I mean, I literally went from the library to the State House to the courthouse, and stopped there.
Well, I think it's great. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Lafayette?
He served in Massachusetts. A lot of people go from the State House to the courthouse, but
And then one other house after
There's one more, right? And, not good.
It's the truth wins out. The only comment I would make, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the volunteer part, I had a brief conversation with the town manager about the personnel committee over the years. As more and more town employees have become unionized, the personnel committee's duties have been reduced, and so my recommendation, if we were to appoint to the Personnel Committee, that one of the things is sort of to look at, is there still the need for the Personnel Committee as it's operating, or does it need to be reconfigured? I'm nothing against anybody doing the work, because I believe they've done all the duties that they've been doing, but the question becomes, is there still the need for that committee as we look at the operation? So if that's the one that he gets appointed to, then that would be one thing I was going to bring up at some point anyways, and this is the opportunity just to look at how that operates.
And I know that question has come up before, and I think it really should be revisited again. Any other questions for Mr. Lafayette?
No, it's not. MART is separate.
I don't have a question for Mr. Lafayette, but I do have a question on the MJTC. Would this be a citizen at large appointment? What is the vacancy there? Because I know someone from the planning board is currently sitting on the MJTC.
No, I don't believe somebody from the planning board is on.
No, there is.
Okay, so then this must be a citizen appointment.
Now, last week, this is not on the form, but last week we acknowledged that and announced that we have an opening for a MART, which is the Montechusett Area Rapid Transit, or Regional Transit, sorry. Well, Rapid Transit.
Hopefully.
Maybe one could hope, but advisory board. And I don't know if that interests you, but it is a board, it is a vacancy that had come up because a citizen was asking about extending it to, right now, the only place Mart services generally is the Eagle House and the seniors.
Right.
And there are people with other disabilities that are looking for that, and we really need a seat. We need a person at the table.
Can I just comment on that? Because this is something I was going to bring up under the MPO. On the MART, I did raise the question of how do we expand operation and how do we expand services? And I met with the MART representative, and what she said is we need to flush out where we need service, what type of service we need, whether we want to expand our existing Council on Aging service or whether there's something outside of the scope of that. And so there's going to be a steering committee organized that's going to look at this for the region. And the question that she had is, does Lunenburg want to be part of that steering committee? So this would be a very good opportunity to get involved with MART.
I throw myself at your mercy. It certainly is interesting. I think, from time to time we still hear the push, don't we, for mass transit for that, and depending on what happens as far as the community in the short term with senior housing as but one example, that may well mesh into that plan as well.
Mr. Chairman, I think Mr. Lafayette has demonstrated some flexibility here and certainly has a good background. We're in the process of reviewing the makeup and the charter of the PAC, the makeup and the charter of the Personnel Committee. Might we just kind of not bury this by any means, but maybe defer a decision until we solve those two things and then bring it back?
Absolutely, and I would ask Mr. Lafayette one last question. I mean, neither of these are, I would estimate, large time consumers, and because they're appointed positions, you can hold more than one.
Uh-oh.
Again, I don't think, I know that you're going to be focusing on fence viewing primarily.
Right.
On your off days. Would you be averse to being on more than one? Again, we're not going to appoint anything. I think we're going to.
I'd like to think about it. I'd like to see what, in fact, you're thinking of doing with me.
Okay.
Okay. How would that be? Fair enough?
That sounds great.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, is the fence viewer position open?
We have 2 fence viewer positions. One is vacant and has been since 2008.
Are there any lake viewer positions? I'm pretty good at that.
Harbor master.
Mr. Chairman, in doing my research, I think, isn't there also something having to do with lumber?
Yes, there is.
The surveyor of lumber?
Surveyor of lumber.
This is frightening. I think there may be a conflict between fences and lumber.
Yes, you cannot hold both.
Right, I don't want to begin my public career here in Lunenburg flagrantly in conflict.
And then that ties into the Agricultural Commission because of the trees farming that we have.
Wow, this is getting complicated.
This is terrible.
That's it. I told you at the beginning we're going to appoint you to every committee, and it may look that comes true.
Apparently, I'll become the czar of timber.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming forward.
Thanks.
And we will get back to you, definitely.
Everybody's pining for that job.
And last but only alphabetically is our last applicant, Steve Walker. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Steve Walker. I can't ask you to say you've known me for a long time. I've been here since September of last year. I used to live in Marlborough, lived there for 30 years. I saw there was apparently a need on the PAC, so one thing I did, perhaps foolishly, was reviewed last week's meeting on the public access channel. I still came tonight. So my experience is I worked for the telephone company for 30 years in Italy, in England, and the last 16 years here in the States. That was GTE, which then became Verizon. My involvement there was mainly video systems. I built an on-demand video system and installed it in Los Angeles in 1989, so some years ahead of on-demand being available. I was the technical director for the installation of a wireless cable system, which is indeed oxymoronic, but it functions like a cable system, doesn't use cable, in a place called Hawaii, which was one of my tougher assignments. After I retired for 4 years, I was a videographer, where I shot video of houses for Coldwell Banker that would be put up on the web. For the last 10 years or so at my church, I've made a DVD of Vacation Bible School. So I have technology, I have cameras, I have cable systems, I have a bunch of stuff. So being new here and kind of liking the place, we thought we should offer some time. And the PAC seemed to be the best match until I started looking at it. But I'm still okay. If we can make it all come together, I can be part of making it come together and it can become useful. That would be my pleasure.
Excellent. Well, obviously I don't have to ask about background, because that, I think, covers just about everything they're going to do. And then, of course, there's policy, but I mean, certainly they have the engineering down and the experience. Thank you for coming forward, especially having just lived here for, what, 7, 8 months?
September of last year. Yeah,
welcome to the town.
I live on Pleasant Street, and if you need a solar farm viewer, I can see it from my deck.
Perfect.
Yeah. Hitting all the high notes.
Although he seems not to want to entertain any questions. Does anybody have any questions? Mr. Walker? No, that's fine.
I don't have any questions. I just want to thank Mr. Walker for coming forward. I think his experience will be invaluable to the committee. As you stated, Mr. Chairman, this will wait until we change the makeup of the PAC, but I want to thank you for coming forward. I think we could really benefit from your experience.
I want to thank everybody for coming forward, and to the one person who was appointed, thank you, and to everybody else who I'm sure will be, thank you for coming forward. And as things progress for whatever reason in the committees that you're interested in, we will notify you before we appoint you, just to make sure that everything is still okay with you on whatever committee that we look to assign you to. So thank you again. Minutes. Warrants. Accounts payable in the amount of $124,517.51.
And this second warrant actually was approved at a previous meeting, but the signature page was misplaced.
Okay, so this is a previous one in the amount of $253,975.48. A review and discussion of the 2015 Town Manager's recommended budget. Anything on that? No, we will keep that on. Review and discussion of warrant articles. Well, we're going to discuss some of them in a workshop.
I have an updated list
There's an
from
updated
last
list
week.
of them. Committee reports. Board of Health.
Mr. Chairman, before that, one item on the minutes.
Okay.
I emailed late during the day. It's a minor change. The comment about the PAC bylaw amendments, it says that it needs to be on the warrant when I think we intended it that it needs to be at town meeting. This makes it look like once the PAC amendments are on our warrant, then theoretically we'd make appointments then. And I think the intent was that we would actually do it at the time of
Right after
town meeting.
Yep, okay. Yep.
No report from Board of Health.
Building reuse.
No report at this time.
Capital Planning,
No report.
Finance Committee,
We'll continue their meetings this Thursday evening at 7 o'clock right here in Town Hall.
You know who's up this week?
Yeah, the schools.
That's right. Lunenburg Schools and Monty Tech, correct?
Correct.
Okay. That's televised at 7 o'clock. MPO, Lorberry Board of Trustees, I'm sorry.
No report.
MPO,
MPO, the meeting last week, we started looking at the fiscal 15-18 TIP. Unfortunately, in reviewing the project list for the TIP, the projects that are going to be considered, Chase Road did not appear. I inquired as to why, and after following up with Arthur Frost from Mass DOT and Brad Harris of Montechusett Regional Planning Commission, apparently there was some information that had not been submitted. The PIF and PNF were submitted back in November, but they were looking for some additional crash data on a couple of the intersections and had not received that. There was a meeting set up, and because of from the review committee of MassDOT that had been set up and had to be canceled because of a snowstorm. And their next meeting, again, they were awaiting data, is not scheduled until April 3rd. Unfortunately, because that meeting doesn't happen until April 3rd, TIP Day is March 25th. So that is the day that all of the projects will be prioritized and identified for discussion or inclusion in the TIP. So I believe we've missed our opportunity for funding for Chase Road for this year. And, you know, I did have a meeting with the town manager today. We really need to get more involved with the process. I believe we're missing opportunities for funding. There are a number of roads beyond Chase Road that are eligible for funding if we get involved in the process, and I think we need to do that. I think we need to aggressively go after opportunities, and I think that, you know, I'm happy to sit at the table, but I can only sit at the table and advocate if I have the data and the information that I need to do that.
Fair enough. Planning Board.
Sorry.
Nope, I'm set.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, Planning Board, no report. Sorry.
School Advisory Committee on Acceptance and Diversity.
No further report.
School Committee.
Meeting tomorrow night.
School Building Committee.
We met last week. We looked at starting to see some renderings of what the interior is going to look like. It's pretty exciting to see it kind of take shape. There'll be some more community outreach starting in April to get more input. Of course, I've been meeting with educators, et cetera, and staff. They're starting to look at the building systems, just deciding and designing a number of boilers, that type of thing. And we're starting to get some returns on expected costs. One thing discussed was the greenhouse, which everyone was pretty concerned about. They did have a meeting with the Agriculture Commission. At one point, Agriculture Commission kind of saw more of an opportunity for a production facility, larger greenhouse, detached from the building, more in tune with production for use in the cafeterias, et cetera, which is really a different application than what, from an education perspective, you know, it was supposed to be something designed attached to the school so you could be extended part of the classroom. So there'll be more discussion, try to work through some kind of meeting in the middle. They got some preliminary numbers on designs and costs, and it's actually quite a bit cheaper than had been expected. So we'll see where that finally comes in. And we did have a general discussion about, you know, as we do get costs, obviously we want to reduce spending wherever we can. One thing we discussed was, you know, some of the value engineering we had done had been like to change the peak roofs from steel roofs to asphalt shingles. So it would make sense long-term if we start looking at that, if other costs are coming in lower, maybe go back to some of that value engineering and reverse it where we can make for a 50-year envelope as opposed to a 20, 25-year, you know, roof structure, and see if we can't make a long-term investment, but that'll all be part of the ongoing process, so we're making headway.
Excellent. Thanks. Sewer Commission.
No further report.
I do want to report that the one position that had nobody running for it last night at the caucus was Sewer Commission. So if anybody out there is interested in running for Sewer Commission, you can take out papers now and run. It was the one body that did not have anybody running for it. And I have no further report on Mass Broadband.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to add one thing to the MPO, and that is the Summer Street project. Although it is still in the fiscal 17 tip, the governor released his draft transportation capital improvement plan, and Summer Street, the funding for Summer Street is not included. I did send an email to Senator Flanagan and Representative Benson, and they have sent letters requesting that project be included, but it's $333,000 to the town of Lunenburg to finish that design. I did speak with the town manager about this today. We have a very aggressive timeline in order to meet the deadlines associated with meeting that fiscal 17 tip. And without that funding, it's going to be impossible for us to move that project forward. So it's critical that we get that funding. And so I would just suggest that anyone that wants to see this project move forward, contact their representatives and push to get this funding released so that we can move this project forward.
And I don't know if it was by just omission, but obviously Representative Di Natale should get that as well.
I did send it to Representative Di Natale as well and have not received a response. I did send, the email that I sent was to all three when I learned that it was not included.
Right. Thank you. Town manager reports.
I just have one. You asked me last week to follow up on the question about a review for the middle school, high school project, what we did with the primary school, and an opinion from town council regarding applicability of the review. So I did distribute a memorandum. I can tell you the response that I received from town council regarding the review of the project. He advised that under the Dover Amendment of the Zoning Act, public and nonprofit educational and religious uses are exempt from local use regulation, which is what was presented at last week's meeting. They are permitted anywhere in the community and are subject only to reasonable dimensional regulations. The project would not be subject to any kind of special permit review, but could be subject to a limited site plan review under the zoning bylaw. So then I asked some of the staff in the land use department what type of review was conducted on the primary school project. And the report I received, and this was back around 2002, that we had a review of drainage, the easement plan, environmental impact statement, project specs, and site plan. That review was done by David Ross from Ross & Associates, who is one of our peer review engineers, and he did that review pro bono. I've attached a copy of the first report that he provided to planning, and the file indicates that he did about 10 other reviews on the project between May 2002 and August of 2005.
Any questions for the town manager on this?
Mr. Chairman, just looking at the report that David Ross did regarding the site plan, there were 30 different comments about the various plan. I share Mr. Matthews' concern about not reinventing the wheel, but there may be some value to an additional review just to make sure that some of the other items are there. And then in addition, as what Mrs. Bertram talked about last week, was planning for the future regarding to the elementary school. Just not that we're going to delay this school for looking at that, but just making sure that whatever we do here is not going to impact that.
Mr. Chairman, I would agree wholeheartedly. I still think that it does make sense to have, the planning board look at it. And given the fact that the history has shown that engineers are willing to look at it pro bono, I think that, as I said last year, is it certainly merits a discussion with the planning board. And I think it's critical that we look at it from both a school perspective as well as the town perspective. But looking at this list, and briefly, there were some things that were pointed out, and I think it benefited the project as a whole.
Yeah, I don't think anybody was saying that it wouldn't get reviewed at some regard. I think the question was, does it need a full site plan review per the bylaw? So that I think has been answered at least, so that does not have to happen. So we can choose, as seems like it was done then, selectively chose things to review, and I think they're all important things. I don't want to diminish that. So we have the answer to the primary question that was asked, that we don't have to follow a site plan review. But clearly, other boards, especially the planning board, are going to want to see this, and we want the other boards to have input into things that may come up in other people's minds. So yes, and if we can get the word pro bono, that is always helpful.
Can I make a comment? I just think it's important for the boards and committees to decide whether or not a review is needed, regardless of whether or not the work is going to be done pro bono. Mr. Ross is retired or semi-retired. I know in the past he's done an awful lot of work for the town pro bono. I don't necessarily think that his firm is in a position to do that. I haven't talked to him, so I can't speak for him, but I think either we should have the review or not have the review, but not make it contingent upon whether or not we can get somebody to do it at no cost, because we just, back in 2002, it was a different environment. We had peer review engineers were doing a lot of work for the town. That's not necessarily the case today.
Any further reports?
No.
Any further items on this particular issue?
Well, the planning board's here. I might want to get their input. Maybe the chair wants to, if she could, tell us what the plan is, what the thought is.
Greetings.
Good evening, Joanna Bellotta Simeone, Chairman of the Planning Board. We discussed it at the meeting. Mike Savageau read the exact same thing Kerry said that it was done pro bono, he believed. So when we had said we would do a modified site plan review, we supported the school and will work wholeheartedly as best we can to get it done and build a beautiful school.
The question is regarding this project, the high school. The discussion that we had last week is whether or not, A, is a site plan review required, and the answer is no. But the question is, and it may be something you want to discuss with the board, is how you, as a board, would like to handle this, whether it's something you feel you can look at a local level, whether you want to hire a peer reviewer. And while I agree with the town manager that whether there's a cost or not isn't necessarily going to change the position, but I would like to understand the costs associated with it if we do a peer review. So that's the question that's before the planning board, is whether you envision a full peer review or whether it be a modified review, or what specific aspects of the plan you'd be looking at from a planning perspective.
I envisioned a modified site plan review with the peer review engineer, based on what Mr. Ebersol said last week, is that I am not an engineer. So I can look at the plan, but I'm not an architect, I'm not an engineer, and I weigh heavily on their feedback to guide us through that. So it would be with a peer review engineer.
I'm assuming that they have not determined what exactly they're going to look for at this particular point.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Excellent.
But I would want to say here that I'm qualified to read the plan and give my thumbs up and go build the school based on Joanna Bellotta Simeone's input.
Excellent.
Thank you.
As far as the side issues with how this will impact the reuse of the Passio school, I think probably need more input from the zoning official as to what will be restricted, what won't be restricted, some kind of guidance there, because that's really got nothing whatsoever to do with the school.
Right.
So if we're looking ahead at future uses there, I think that's a whole other conversation. So I don't know how we want to start that.
And that is on the agenda, is to make sure that we include the various land use boards and zoning, et cetera, in that bid process, in our planning process, et cetera.
In the building reuse committee you're talking
Yes,
about? Okay.
yes.
Yes, okay. Any other reports? Okay, we are going to have a joint meeting with the planning board and a workshop, so that will not be televised on some of their articles for town meeting. That will be between the boards. Obviously, it's open to the public, but it won't be televised. The planning board, you have a public hearing on this, on your articles, is that?
Monday
This coming Monday, the 24th.
Here in this room.
24th, Monday, March 24th, right here at Town Hall. They have their public meeting with their board on the article. So again, I would encourage people to
And there's
come
a
up.
draft of the bylaw. There is a draft of the bylaw on our website, and I would ask if anybody is interested to please read it, because the CMR, the main bullet of our bylaw, is 53 pages, so I will not be reading that.
Oh, come on.
During the public hearing. So I ask that you please go online, read it, because that's really the main meat of, it's the state regulation that we will follow, and then we've added probably 3 pages of things to that, but the CMR is really the meat of it, and it's 53 pages. So it is on our town website, the planning website, as a draft copy right now, so if you wanted to review that.
Excellent.
Thank you.
And of course, we encourage people to go to the public hearing of the article.
And Mr. Chairman, I know we have the workshop with the planning board, specifically on the articles. I apologize for not sending out earlier, but as I had mentioned last week, one of the things that I'd like to talk about, and perhaps schedule another workshop, because I think it's not just the planning board, it's also our DPW director, is stormwater and stormwater improvements associated with developments. And I think Mr. Matthews had the suggestion of, is there a way to standardize things so that when we do find ourselves in a situation where we have to maintain them? So I think it's something we need to look at moving forward as a community. There are stormwater standards established under Mass General Law that we need to follow, as well as our stormwater bylaw. But, as these developments are built and stormwater structures are built, the town, if the roadway becomes a public road, the town assumes responsibility and financial responsibility for maintaining those structures. And looking at the limited funding we have on roadways from our DPW, that remains a concern. So I think it's a discussion we need to have fairly soon. So perhaps, since it's not specifically on the agenda, I would like to see potentially another workshop or another agenda item.
Any final public comment while we're televised from the board this evening?
Mr. Chairman, 2 questions for the town manager. Just not specifically an answer, but the bylaws project for getting that codified. We had the question tonight about where the bylaws, where something might be in, and I had a question the other day, and I have a copy of the last version of the bylaws, but it'd be good to find out where that is. And then secondly, we had talked about at one point the traffic rules and regulations, where the status is of that. I was at a private entity with a stop sign, and I questioned whether if somebody ran that, I didn't at that time, but whether somebody would be traffic ticketed for that point, and just sort of like where we are with that one too.
That one I can answer. The first, I'll have to get an update from the town clerk, but about a month ago, the DPW director circulated a draft of the draft traffic rules and regulations, really to the police department. So the DPW director and police chief have been reviewing those. And I thought that would be a good topic for April. Once we get through the warrant, you kind of have a lag between budget and town meeting. So I was looking at scheduling a workshop to bring the engineer in, DPW, and the police chief to go through those rules and regulations.
Mr. Chairman?
Mrs. Bertram.
This is information that I've shared with the DPW director. In addition to looking at the tip at the last meeting, MRPC announced a program that they're looking specifically at signage, and signage in relationship to curves specifically, but there is opportunity for some professional expertise as well as some grant writing opportunities that MRPC is willing to provide. So I did forward that information and the forms to our DPW director, but if we do have, and this is for both federal aid eligible roads and local roads, so there is no exemption. So again, there are some opportunities for some assistance that we should take advantage of, and that relates specifically to signage.
Any final public comment from the board? Any public comment from the public? Okay, we will not be adjourning our meeting, but we will be signing off from TV, and we'll be moving over to the conference table to have our joint meeting with the planning board. So I'll say good night. We do not have a meeting next Tuesday. Our next meeting will be, yes, the very adventurous April Fool's Day meeting of 2014. Thank you and good night.